Richard Barnes stood at the window of his penthouse, staring at the city lights below. The divorce papers sat on his desk, his signature still fresh on the dotted line. He had everything money could buy: a billion-dollar tech company, homes around the world, cars, jets, and respect. But as he looked around the empty penthouse, he felt nothing but a hollow ache in his chest. His phone buzzed with a text. A photo from his friend Marcus. Without thinking, Richard opened it and his heart stopped. There was Olivia, his soon-to-be ex-wife, laughing at a restaurant table. A man sat across from her, leaning in close, making her smile in a way Richard hadn't seen in years. The man's hand rested on hers and she wasn't pulling away. Richard's fingers tightened around the phone until his knuckles turned white. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not so soon. Not when the ink on their divorce papers was barely dry. Not when he still woke up reaching for her side of the bed. Who is he? Richard texted Marcus. The reply came quickly: some doctor she works with at the hospital. They've been spending a lot of time together since you moved out. Richard poured himself a drink, then another. By midnight, the bottle was empty, but the burning in his chest wouldn't go away. He had pushed for this divorce. He had told her they had grown apart, that they wanted different things. He had convinced himself that ending their 5-year marriage was the right decision. But seeing her with someone else made him question everything. Richard pulled up her number on his phone. His thumb hovered over the call button. What would he even say? That he was sorry? That he made a mistake? That seeing her with another man was tearing him apart? He put the phone down. His pride wouldn't let him call. Not yet. Not like this. Besides, it was his choice to end things. He couldn't blame her for moving on. As dawn broke over the city, Richard made a decision. He would win her back. Somehow, he would show Olivia that he had changed, that he understood what he had thrown away. He didn't know if it was possible, if she would give him another chance, but he had to try. What Richard didn't know was how difficult the road back would be. Or that the man in the photo was just the beginning of the changes in Olivia's life. Changes that would force Richard to face the real reasons their marriage had failed. Changes that would show him what truly mattered. The next morning, Richard called his lawyer to halt the divorce proceedings, but it was too late. Olivia had already signed the papers and filed them with the court. The countdown to the end of their marriage had begun, and Richard was racing against time. I need more time, he told his lawyer. The process has started, Richard. There's nothing I can do to stop it now unless she agrees. Then I'll make her agree, Richard said, his determination growing. He was a man used to getting what he wanted. He had built his business empire from nothing. Surely he could rebuild his marriage. But as he would soon learn, hearts weren't bought and sold like companies. Trust, once broken, couldn't be fixed with money or power. And Olivia wasn't the same woman he had married 5 years ago. She had grown stronger in his absence, more independent, more certain of what she deserved. Richard stood in his empty bedroom, looking at the spaces where Olivia's things used to be. Her perfumes on the dresser. Her books on the nightstand. Her clothes in the closet. All gone now, leaving only memories and regret. He picked up a framed photo from their wedding day. Olivia looked radiant in her white dress, her dark skin glowing against the fabric, her smile so full of hope and love. Richard barely recognized the man standing beside her, young and in love, certain that the world was theirs for the taking. Where had that man gone? When had money and success become more important than the woman who had been by his side through it all? Richard put the photo in his pocket and headed for the door. It was time to fight for his marriage, for the love he had taken for granted, for the life they had built together. He just hoped it wasn't too late. 2 weeks after signing the divorce papers, Richard sat in his car outside the hospital where Olivia worked as a pediatric surgeon. He had been sitting there for nearly an hour, working up the courage to go inside. What would he say to her? How would she react to seeing him? Finally, he stepped out of the car and walked into the building. The receptionist recognized him immediately. Mr. Barnes, it's been a while. Are you here to see Dr. Barnes? Richard nodded, trying to ignore the pain that came with hearing her still use his last name. Soon, she might choose to go back to her maiden name, erasing another connection between them. She's in surgery right now, but she should be done in about 30 minutes. You can wait in her office if you like. Richard thanked her and made his way to Olivia's office. Nothing had changed since the last time he was there. Her degrees hung on the wall, photos of her with her young patients covered her desk, and a small potted plant sat in the corner, a gift he had given her when she was promoted to head of pediatric surgery. He picked up a photo from her desk, one of the two of them on vacation in Bali last year. They looked happy, his arm around her shoulders, her head resting against his chest. Had they been happy then, or were the cracks already showing? The door opened and Olivia stepped in. She stopped when she saw him, surprise crossing her face before she composed herself. "Richard, what are you doing here?" He placed the photo back on her desk. "I wanted to see you." Olivia crossed her arms over her chest. "The divorce papers are already filed. There's nothing left to discuss." Richard took a step toward her. "I made a mistake, Liv. I want to try again." She shook her head. "You don't get to call me that anymore. And you don't get to change your mind after pushing for this divorce for months." "I saw you with someone else," Richard admitted. "At the Meridian restaurant." Olivia's expression hardened. "You're spying on me now? Marcus saw you and sent me a photo." "Who is he?" "That's none of your business anymore, Richard. Please, Olivia. Just have dinner with me tonight. Let me explain." She looked at him for a long moment and Richard held his breath. Finally she sighed. "One dinner. That's it. And don't expect anything to change." Relief flooded through him. "Thank you. I'll pick you up at 8? Olivia shook her head. "I'll meet you there. Text me the address." As she turned to leave, Richard called out to her. "Olivia, I'm sorry. For everything." She paused at the door but didn't look back. "Sorry doesn't fix what's broken, Richard." That evening, Richard arrived at the restaurant an hour early. He had reserved the best table, ordered Olivia's favorite wine, and made sure everything was perfect. When she walked in, wearing a simple black dress that hugged her curves, his heart raced like it had on their first date. "You look beautiful," he said as she sat down. "Thank you," she replied, her voice polite but distant. "Why am I here, Richard?" He took a deep breath. "I made a mistake asking for a divorce. I've been miserable without you. I miss you." Olivia took a sip of her wine. "You miss the idea of me. You miss having someone waiting for you at home. But you never really saw me, Richard. Not for years." "That's not true," he protested. "When was the last time you asked about my work? Or remembered a dinner date without me reminding you? Or put me ahead of your company?" Richard couldn't answer. The truth was, he had taken her for granted. He had assumed she would always be there, supporting him, waiting for him. "I can change," he promised. "I want to change." Olivia's eyes softened slightly. "People don't change overnight, Richard. Give me a chance to prove it to you. Please." She studied him for a moment. "The man you saw me with? His name is David. He's a colleague, a friend. Nothing more." Hope surged through Richard. "So you're not seeing anyone?" "I didn't say that. I'm trying to figure out who I am without you. I'm focusing on my career, my friends, my life." "Could I be part of that life again?" Richard asked. Olivia placed her napkin on the table. "I don't know, Richard. You hurt me. You pushed me away when I needed you most. You chose your work over our marriage again and again." "I was wrong," Richard admitted. "I see that now. Because you're lonely? Because you saw me with someone else? That's not good enough." Richard reached across the table and took her hand. To his surprise, she didn't pull away. "I love you, Olivia. I never stopped loving you. I just forgot how to show it." For the first time that evening, Olivia's eyes filled with tears. "I loved you too, Richard. So much. But love isn't always enough." As they finished dinner, Richard felt a glimmer of hope. She hadn't shut the door completely. Maybe there was still a chance to rebuild what they had lost. "Can I see you again?" he asked as they walked to her car. Olivia hesitated. "I'm having a fundraiser for the children's ward next weekend. You can come if you want. As a donor, not as my date." Richard nodded eagerly. "I'll be there." "Thank you for tonight, Olivia." As he watched her drive away, Richard knew he had a long way to go to win back her trust. But he was determined to try. What he didn't know was that Olivia's life had changed in ways he couldn't imagine, and the road back to her heart would be filled with obstacles he never expected. The week leading up to the hospital fundraiser felt like the longest of Richard's life. He threw himself into researching pediatric care, determined to impress Olivia with his interest in her work. He donated $1 million to the children's ward in her name and made sure the hospital board knew about his commitment to supporting Olivia's projects. When the night of the fundraiser arrived, Richard dressed carefully in his best suit. He arrived early, his heart pounding as he scanned the room for Olivia. He finally spotted her across the crowded ballroom, stunning in a deep blue gown that made her dark skin glow. She was talking to a tall man with broad shoulders and a warm smile. Richard's stomach tightened as he recognized him from the restaurant photo. So this was David. He was handsome in a rugged way, with kind eyes and confidence in his stance. The way he looked at Olivia made Richard's blood boil, with respect, admiration, and something deeper. Taking a deep breath, Richard crossed the room toward them. Olivia, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. You look amazing. She turned, surprise flickering across her face. Richard, you came. I wouldn't miss it. This is important to you. She nodded, then gestured to the man beside her. This is Dr. David Washington. He's our new head of cardiology. David, this is Richard Barnes. David extended his hand. Your soon-to-be ex-husband. I've heard a lot about you. Richard shook his hand, squeezing perhaps a bit harder than necessary. Funny, I haven't heard anything about you. Olivia shot him a warning look. David has been instrumental in developing our new heart surgery wing. The one your donation will help fund. Happy to support such important work, Richard said, not taking his eyes off David. I've always valued what Olivia does here. David smiled. Olivia is one of the most talented surgeons I've ever worked with. You're a lucky man to have had her in your life. Had. Richard repeated. The divorce isn't final yet. An awkward silence fell over the group. Olivia cleared her throat. I should greet the other donors. David, could you check on the presentation setup? After David left, Olivia turned to Richard. What are you doing? What do you mean? You're acting like a jealous teenager. David is my colleague and friend. The way he looks at you suggests he wants to be more than friends, Richard said. Olivia sighed. Even if that were true, it's not your concern anymore. It is if I'm trying to save our marriage. Our marriage ended when you handed me those divorce papers, Richard. You can't just change your mind because you're jealous. Before Richard could respond, the hospital director called everyone's attention to the stage. Throughout the evening, Richard watched as Olivia and David worked the room together, finishing each other's sentences, sharing inside jokes, touching each other's arms in casual conversation. They looked like a team, like partners. Like he and Olivia used to be. When the formal part of the evening ended, Richard found Olivia alone at the bar. Your speech was amazing, he said, sitting beside her. You're going to change so many lives with this new wing. Olivia looked surprised by his genuine praise. Thank you. It's been my dream for years. I know, Richard said. I should have supported it more when we were together. She studied him for a moment. Why did you really come tonight, Richard? To see you. To show you I can change, that I want to be part of your life again. Olivia's expression softened. I appreciate the donation. It means a lot to the hospital. But not to you? Richard asked. Money was never what I wanted from you, Richard. I wanted your time, your attention, your partnership. David approached them, his hand resting lightly on Olivia's shoulder. Ready to go? Our reservation is in 20 minutes. Olivia nodded, then turned back to Richard. Thank you for coming tonight. You're leaving with him? Richard couldn't keep the hurt from his voice. We're having dinner with the hospital board, Olivia explained. It's work. Richard wanted to protest, to ask her to stay, but he bit his tongue. If he wanted to prove he had changed, he needed to respect her space. Of course. Have a good evening. As he watched them leave together, a new determination filled Richard. He would not lose Olivia without a fight. He would show her that he could be the man she deserved, the partner she needed. But first, he needed to understand what had gone wrong between them. The next day, Richard called Olivia's sister, Jasmine. They had always been close, and if anyone knew what Olivia was really thinking, it would be her. I'm surprised to hear from you, Jasmine said when she answered. I thought you'd be off celebrating your bachelor freedom. I made a mistake, Jess. I want Olivia back. Jasmine was quiet for a moment. You hurt her badly, Richard. Worse than you know. I want to make it right. Tell me how. It's not that simple. There are things you don't understand. Then help me understand, Richard pleaded. Jasmine sighed. Meet me for coffee tomorrow. There's something you need to know. Richard arrived at the coffee shop 20 minutes early, his mind racing with possibilities. What was the thing he didn't understand? What had Jasmine meant? When Olivia's sister walked in, her expression was guarded. They had once been close, bonding over their shared love for Olivia, but the divorce had strained that relationship too. Thank you for meeting me, Richard said as Jasmine sat down. She nodded, studying him. You look terrible. Richard gave a humorless laugh. Thanks. I haven't been sleeping well. Having regrets? More than I can count, he admitted. I miss her, Jazz. Jasmine's eyes softened slightly. Why did you ask for the divorce, Richard? Really? Richard stared into his coffee cup. I thought we were growing apart. We both worked so much, barely saw each other. When we were together, we fought about everything. I convinced myself we'd be happier apart. And now I realize I was wrong. I was stressed about the company, taking it out on her. I took her for granted. Jasmine was quiet for a long moment. Did Olivia ever tell you why she started working so many hours at the hospital last year? Richard frowned. She said they were short-staffed, that they needed her. That was part of it, Jasmine agreed. But not the whole story. What do you mean? Jasmine took a deep breath. 6 months ago, Olivia found a lump in her breast. Richard felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. What? No, she would have told me. She tried to. The night she got the results back, she made your favorite dinner, bought champagne. She wanted to tell you face to face. A sick feeling grew in Richard's stomach as he remembered that night. I didn't come home. I had a business dinner that ran late. Jasmine nodded. She called you, but you didn't answer. When you finally came home past midnight, you didn't even notice the dinner she'd made or ask why she was still up waiting for you. I had no idea, Richard whispered, his voice cracking. The next day you complained about her working too much, about her not being there for you. So she decided not to tell you. She went through it all alone, the biopsy, the waiting, the worry. Richard's hands were shaking. Is she? It was benign, Jasmine assured him. But she didn't know that for weeks. She thought she might be dying, Richard, and you were too busy to notice something was wrong. Shame washed over him. How had he missed the signs? How had he been so blind to what his wife was going through? After that, she threw herself into her work, Jasmine continued. The hospital became her sanctuary, the place where she felt needed and valued. And then you asked for a divorce. Richard felt tears burning his eyes. I didn't know. God, Jess, I swear I didn't know. That's the problem, Richard. You stopped seeing her. The real her. You were so focused on your company, on your success, that you missed what was happening right in front of you. Does she have feelings for him? For David? Richard asked, dreading the answer. Jasmine sighed. David was her doctor. He performed the biopsy, supported her through the whole ordeal. They became friends. And yes, I think there could be more between them now. He sees her, Richard. He values her. He puts her first. The truth hit Richard like a physical blow. While he had been chasing success, Olivia had been facing her mortality alone. While he had been complaining about her absence, she had been finding comfort in her work and in people who supported her. I need to talk to her, Richard said, standing up. Jasmine caught his arm. Don't ambush her with this. She didn't tell you for a reason. Because I was a terrible husband, Richard said bitterly. Because she didn't want your pity or your guilt. If you want another chance with her, you need to show her you've changed, not because of what she went through, but because you truly understand what matters. Richard nodded slowly. Thank you for telling me, Jess. I know you didn't have to. Jasmine stood up. I didn't do it for you. I did it for Olivia. She deserves to be happy, whether that's with you or without you. As Jasmine left, Richard sat alone, the truth of his failure as a husband washing over him. He had been so caught up in his own world that he had missed Olivia's pain, her fear, her need for support. No wonder she had turned to someone else, someone who had been there for her when he hadn't. Richard knew now that winning Olivia back wouldn't be as simple as grand gestures or declarations of love. He needed to prove that he had truly changed, that he could be the partner she deserved. And he would start by showing her that he saw her, all of her, and that nothing was more important to him than her happiness. 3 days after his meeting with Jasmine, Richard stood outside Olivia's apartment building, flowers in hand. Not roses, she had always found them overused, but sunflowers, bright and bold like her spirit. He had rehearsed what he would say, how he would apologize without revealing that he knew about her health scare. But now that he was here, all his carefully planned words seemed inadequate. He pressed the buzzer for her apartment, his heart racing. Hello. Her voice crackled through the intercom. It's Richard. Can I come up? Just for a few minutes. There was a pause and Richard held his breath. Finally, the door buzzed open. Olivia opened her apartment door wearing jeans and an oversized sweater, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Even like this, especially like this, she took his breath away. Sunflowers, she said, noticing the bouquet. You remembered. Richard handed them to her. I remember everything about you, Liv. I just forgot to show it. She took the flowers and stepped back, allowing him to enter. The apartment was different from their shared home, smaller, cozier, filled with books and plants and color. It was distinctly Olivia in a way their mansion never had been. I like what you've done with the place, he said, looking around. It's not much, but it's mine. She placed the flowers in a vase. Why are you here, Richard? He took a deep breath. I've been doing a lot of thinking since the fundraiser. About us, about what went wrong. Olivia crossed her arms. And what conclusion did you reach? That I failed you. Not just as a husband but as a friend, as a partner. I put everything else before you, my company, my success, my ego. Surprise flickered across her face. She had clearly expected excuses, not accountability. I was so focused on building our future that I missed our present, Richard continued. I missed you, what you were going through, what you needed from me. Olivia's expression softened slightly. That's surprisingly insightful. Richard smiled ruefully. I'm trying to be better at seeing what's right in front of me. Why now, Richard? Why the sudden change? Seeing you at the fundraiser, watching you talk about your work with such passion. I realized how long it's been since I really saw you. The real you. And I miss that person. I miss us. Olivia sighed and sat down on the couch. After a moment, Richard joined her, careful to keep some distance between them. I've changed too, Richard, she said quietly. The woman you married doesn't exist anymore. I know. And I want to know the woman you've become. She looked at him skeptically. Just like that? You think we can start over? Not just like that, Richard admitted. I know I have a lot to prove to you. But I'd like the chance to try. Olivia was quiet for a long moment. There's something I never told you. Something important. Richard's heart raced. Was she going to tell him about the lump? Last year I had a health scare, she said, her voice steady but vulnerable. A breast lump. It turned out to be benign, but for a while I thought I might be sick. Really sick. Richard took her hand, his eyes filling with tears. Olive, why didn't you tell me? I tried, she said, the hurt still evident in her voice. But you weren't there. You were always working, always busy. And then you started talking about divorce and it didn't seem to matter anymore. It matters, Richard said fiercely. You matter. And I'm so sorry I wasn't there for you when you needed me. A tear slipped down Olivia's cheek. David was. He was my doctor. He held my hand through the biopsy, called me personally with the results, checked on me every day until we knew for sure I was okay. Richard felt a stab of jealousy, but he pushed it aside. I'm glad you had someone. I should have been that person, but I'm grateful you weren't alone. Olivia looked surprised by his response. That's not what I expected you to say. What did you expect? Anger? Jealousy? Questions about whether there was something between us back then? Richard shook his head. There probably should be, but all I feel is gratitude that someone was there for you when I wasn't. And shame that it wasn't me. Olivia studied him for a long moment. You really have changed, haven't you? I'm trying to, Richard said honestly. I can't change the past or what I did, but I can change how I move forward. If you'll let me. Olivia wiped away her tears. I don't know if I can trust you again, Richard. You hurt me deeply. I know. And I don't expect you to forgive me overnight. I just want a chance to show you that things can be different. What about the divorce? It's almost final. Richard took a deep breath. If that's what you truly want, I won't fight it. But I'm hoping you might consider giving us one more chance. Olivia was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, there's a charity gala for the hospital next month. You could be my +1 if you want. Just as friends. Hope bloomed in Richard's chest. I'd be honored. As he left her apartment, Richard felt lighter than he had in months. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. A chance to rebuild what they had lost. A step in the right direction. What he didn't know was that their journey back to each other had only just begun, and the biggest test of their love was still to come. The weeks leading up to the hospital gala were filled with small moments of reconnection between Richard and Olivia. Coffee dates before her shifts. Lunch in the park near the hospital. Long phone calls that stretched into the night. With each meeting, each conversation, Richard felt the wall between them slowly lowering. He learned about her life now, her friends at the hospital, her volunteer work with young cancer patients, her dreams for the future of pediatric surgery. And he shared his own changes, stepping back from day-to-day operations at his company, starting a foundation to support medical research, rediscovering his passion for photography, something he had abandoned in his pursuit of success. Bit by bit, they were finding their way back to each other. Or so Richard thought. 3 days before the gala, Richard stopped by the hospital to surprise Olivia with lunch. As he approached her office, he heard voices inside Olivia's and Aman's. David's. You should tell him, David was saying. Before the gala. I know, Olivia replied. But it's complicated. He's really trying, David. I haven't seen him this open, this attentive since we first met. And that matters to you? David's voice was gentle, not accusatory. Of course it does. We shared 5 years of our lives. I loved him deeply. part of me still does. Richard's heart soared at her words, but David's response brought him crashing back to earth. And us? Does what we have matter too? There was a long pause. You know it does. But I'm not divorced yet. I need to be fair to everyone involved. Fair to him? After everything he put you through? David, please. I need to handle this my way. Richard stepped back from the door, his mind reeling. There was something between them. Something real. Something that threatened everything he was trying to rebuild with Olivia. Before he could decide whether to knock or leave, the door opened and David stepped out. He stopped short when he saw Richard. Barnes? He said, his surprise quickly masked by cool politeness. Here to see Olivia? Richard nodded, trying to keep his expression neutral. Just brought her lunch. David's eyes narrowed slightly. How thoughtful of you. Better late than never, I suppose. Before Richard could respond, Olivia appeared in the doorway. Richard, I didn't know you were coming by. Surprise, Richard said, forcing a smile. I brought your favorite, that Thai place on 4th Street. Olivia's face lit up. You remembered? Thank you. David looked between them, then stepped back. I should get back to my patients. Olivia, think about what I said. As David walked away, an awkward silence fell between Richard and Olivia. Come in, she finally said, gesturing to her office. This is a nice surprise. They sat at her small conference table and Richard unpacked the food, his mind racing with questions he wasn't sure he should ask. How's your day been? He asked instead. Olivia smiled. Good. I had a successful surgery this morning, a 9-year-old with a congenital heart defect. She's going to make a full recovery. That's amazing, Liv. You're incredible at what you do. She looked pleased by his genuine interest. Thanks. It's days like this that remind me why I became a doctor. As they ate, Richard struggled to focus on their conversation, David's words echoing in his mind. What did Olivia need to tell him before the gala? What was happening between her and David? Is everything okay? Olivia asked, noticing his distraction. You seem a million miles away. Richard hesitated, then decided on honesty. I overheard part of your conversation with David. Olivia's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Oh, how much did you hear? Enough to know there's something between you two. Something you're planning to tell me. Olivia put down her fork and sighed. I wanted to have this conversation differently. Are you and David together? Richard asked, bracing himself for her answer. It's complicated, Olivia admitted. After my health scare, after you asked for the divorce, David was there for me. We became close. Very close. Are you in love with him? Richard couldn't keep the pain from his voice. Olivia looked down at her hands. I care for him deeply. He's kind, attentive, supportive. Everything I needed when I was at my lowest. Everything I should have been, Richard said quietly. Olivia nodded, not denying it. But then you came back into my life, saying all the right things, being the man I always knew you could be. And it's confused everything. What are you going to do? Richard asked. Olivia met his gaze. I don't know yet. That's what I need to figure out before the gala. Before our divorce is final. Richard reached across the table and took her hand. I know I have no right to ask this of you, but please give us a real chance. Not just coffee dates and phone calls. A real chance to rebuild what we had. And if I can't? If it's too late? The thought of losing her to David was like a physical pain in Richard's chest. But he knew that if he truly loved her, he had to respect her choice. Then I'll accept your decision, he said. But I'm not giving up without a fight, Olivia. I love you. I never stopped loving you. Tears filled Olivia's eyes. I need time, Richard. Time to sort through my feelings, to figure out what I really want. Richard nodded, even as fear gripped his heart. Take all the time you need. I'll be here. As he left the hospital, Richard knew he was facing his toughest competition yet. Not another company or business rival, but a man who had been there for Olivia when he hadn't. A man who might have already claimed the place in her heart that once belonged to him. But Richard had never backed down from a challenge. And he wasn't about to start now, not when the stakes were so high. Not when the woman he loved was slipping away. The question was, what could he do to prove to Olivia that his love was worth a second chance? The night of the hospital gala arrived, and Richard had never felt more nervous. He dressed carefully in his tuxedo, checking his reflection in the mirror one last time before heading to pick up Olivia. After their conversation at the hospital, things had been strained between them. They had talked on the phone, but Olivia had been distant, clearly still sorting through her feelings. Richard knew tonight might be his last chance to show her what they could have together. When Olivia opened her apartment door, Richard's breath caught in his throat. She wore a stunning red gown that hugged her curves, her hair swept up to reveal the graceful line of her neck. She looked beautiful, confident, radiant. "You look incredible," Richard said, handing her a small box. "This is for you." Olivia opened it to find a delicate gold bracelet with a sunflower charm. "It's beautiful, Richard. To remind you that even on the darkest days, you can still turn your face to the light," he said softly. "Like you taught me to do." Emotion flickered across Olivia's face as she let Richard fasten the bracelet around her wrist. "Thank you. It's thoughtful." The drive to the gala was quiet, both of them lost in their own thoughts. Richard wanted to ask if she had made a decision, if she had chosen between him and David, but he held his tongue. Tonight wasn't about pressuring her. It was about showing her that he could be the man she deserved. When they arrived at the hotel ballroom, all eyes turned to them. Richard and Olivia had once been fixtures at these events, the power couple everyone admired. Now, whispers followed them as they made their way through the crowd, people wondering if reconciliation was in the air. "Dr. Barnes." A young nurse approached them, smiling brightly. "The children from the ward made you something." She handed Olivia a large card covered in colorful handprints and messages of thanks. Olivia's face softened as she read the card. "This is wonderful. Please tell them I'll visit tomorrow to thank them personally." Richard watched her, struck by the genuine care in her expression. This was the woman he had fallen in love with, compassionate, dedicated, real. "You're amazing with them," he said as the nurse walked away. "Those kids adore you." "They're the reason I do what I do," Olivia replied. "Even on the hardest days, their courage keeps me going." Before Richard could respond, he saw David approaching them, handsome in his tuxedo, his eyes fixed on Olivia. "You made it," David said, kissing Olivia's cheek. He nodded coolly to Richard. "Barnes." "David," Richard replied, struggling to keep his voice neutral. An awkward silence fell over the three of them until Olivia spoke. "Let's get some champagne, shall we?" As they made their way to the bar, Richard felt the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He was competing for his own wife's heart with a man who had been there for her when he hadn't. It was a competition he wasn't sure he could win. Throughout the evening, Richard watched as Olivia moved between the two men in her life. With David, she shared inside jokes about the hospital, discussed patients, and moved with the easy familiarity of two people who spent their days together. With Richard there was history, shared memories, and the spark that had never quite died. During dinner, Richard found himself seated next to the hospital director, away from Olivia. From across the room, he saw her laughing at something David said, their heads bent close together. "They make a good team," the director commented, following Richard's gaze. "Dr. Washington has been a godsend for our cardiac program, and your wife has pioneered some revolutionary pediatric techniques. Together, they've saved countless lives." "Ex-wife soon," Richard corrected automatically, the words like ash in his mouth. The director looked surprised. "Really? The way you two have been lately, I assumed you were working things out." "We're trying," Richard admitted. "It's complicated." "Love usually is," the director said wisely. "But when it's real, it's worth fighting for." After dinner, the band began to play and couples moved to the dance floor. Richard watched as David led Olivia into a dance, his hand resting on the small of her back, their bodies moving in perfect rhythm. Richard felt a stab of jealousy, remembering how it used to be his arms around her, his laugh that made her eyes light up. Had he thrown it all away? Was it too late to get it back? As the song ended, Richard approached them. "May I have this dance?" he asked Olivia. She hesitated, looking between the two men, then nodded. "Excuse me, David." David stepped back, his expression unreadable. "Of course." Richard took Olivia in his arms as a slow song began to play. Her familiar scent washed over him, bringing back a flood of memories. "Remember our first dance?" he asked softly. "At that charity ball in Chicago?" Olivia smiled slightly. "You stepped on my toes 3 times. And you still agreed to a second date. You made me laugh," she said simply. "You made me feel like the only woman in the room." You are," Richard said, his voice thick with emotion. "Olivia, I know I've made terrible mistakes. I know I hurt you when you needed me most. But if you give me another chance, I swear I will spend every day making it up to you." Olivia's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Richard, Before she could finish, a commotion near the entrance interrupted them. A nurse was rushing toward them, her face pale. "Dr. Barnes. Dr. Washington. It's Emily Wilson, her heart is failing. We need you both now." Olivia immediately switched into doctor mode. Call the OR, tell them to prep for emergency surgery. Have her files ready. David was already moving toward the exit. I'll meet you there. Olivia turned to Richard. I have to go. It's a 9-year-old patient. Go, Richard said without hesitation. Save her. As Olivia rushed away, Richard felt both pride in the incredible doctor she was and fear that this crisis would push her closer to David, the colleague who shared her dedication, who understood her world in a way Richard never had. With nothing else to do, Richard returned to his seat, his mind racing. What had Olivia been about to say before they were interrupted? Was she going to choose David? Or was there still hope for them? As the gala continued around him, Richard made a decision. If Olivia chose David, he would accept it. He would step aside and let her be happy even if it broke his heart. But if there was even a chance she still loved him, he would fight with everything he had to win her back. Hours later, as the gala was winding down, Richard's phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. Surgery successful. Emily will be okay. Too tired to talk tonight. Can we meet tomorrow? There's something I need to tell you. Richard stared at the message, hope and fear battling inside him. Tomorrow would bring Olivia's decision. Tomorrow would determine the rest of his life. The next morning, Richard sat in a small cafe near the hospital, his coffee growing cold as he waited for Olivia. He had barely slept, his mind consumed with what she might say, what choice she might have made. When she walked in, she looked exhausted but relieved. The emergency surgery had clearly taken its toll, but the success had lifted a weight from her shoulders. Hey, she said, sliding into the seat across from him. Sorry to keep you waiting. Rounds took longer than expected. No problem, Richard assured her. How's Emily? Olivia's face softened. She's stable. The surgery was touch and go for a while, but she pulled through. She's a fighter. Like her doctor, Richard said with a small smile. Olivia returned his smile, then took a deep breath. Richard, about last night, what I was going to say before we were interrupted. Richard braced himself. You've made a decision. She nodded, her eyes serious. I have. But first, I need to tell you something else. Richard waited, his heart pounding. Last night, watching you at the gala, seeing how you've changed, how you've grown, it made me realize something. When I found that lump last year, I was terrified. Not just of being sick, but of going through it alone. And when you weren't there for me, it confirmed my worst fear, that I was already alone in our marriage. Richard winced, the truth of her words painful to hear. David was there for me during the darkest time of my life, Olivia continued. He saw me at my most vulnerable and never once made me feel weak. He reminded me of my strength when I had forgotten it. Richard's hope began to fade. She was choosing David. Of course she was. Why would she choose the man who had failed her over the one who had saved her? I care for David deeply, Olivia said. And in another life maybe we could have had something real. Richard looked up, surprised by her words. In another life? Olivia reached across the table and took his hand. Working with David last night to save Emily, I realized something important. What we have is a deep friendship, a professional bond. But it's not love. Not the kind that lasts a lifetime. Hope surged in Richard's chest. And us. What we had was real, Richard. It was deep and true and powerful. And somewhere along the way we lost sight of it. We let work and stress and daily life dim what we had built together. I let that happen, Richard corrected. I put everything else before you, before us. Olivia squeezed his hand. We both made mistakes. I retreated into my work instead of fighting for us. I kept my health scare a secret instead of insisting, you hear me? We both gave up too easily. Are you saying? Richard could hardly breathe, afraid to put his hope into words. I'm saying I want to try again, Olivia said softly. Not pick up where we left off, but start something new. Something better. Something built on what we've learned apart. Joy washed over Richard like a wave. Yes, he said, his voice thick with emotion. God, yes. But Richard, Olivia's expression grew serious, I need you to understand something. I'm not the same woman you married. My work will always be a huge part of my life. I will always put my patients' needs first in emergencies. And I need a partner who supports that, who sees it as a strength, not a competition for my time. I see you, Olivia, Richard said earnestly. All of you. The brilliant surgeon, the compassionate doctor, the woman who fights for what's right. I love every part of you and I want to support your dreams, not compete with them. Tears filled Olivia's eyes. That's all I ever wanted from you. What about the divorce? Richard asked cautiously. It's almost final. Olivia took a deep breath. I called my lawyer this morning. I've asked him to halt the proceedings. If you still want that too. More than anything, Richard said, standing and pulling her into his arms. I love you, Olivia Barnes. I never stopped loving you. Olivia wrapped her arms around his neck. I love you too. But this time we do things differently. We make each other a priority. We communicate. We fight for us every single day. Every single day, Richard promised, sealing his words with a kiss. As they left the cafe hand in hand, Richard knew they had a long road ahead of them. Trust would need to be rebuilt. Old habits would need to be broken. They would need to learn how to be partners again in the truest sense of the word. But for the first time in months, Richard felt hope. Real hope. Not just for reconciliation but for a marriage stronger than the one they had before. A marriage built on understanding, respect, and unwavering love. What they didn't know was that their newfound commitment would soon be tested in ways they never expected. And the true strength of their love would be revealed in the face of an unexpected challenge that would change their lives forever. 3 months after reconciling, Richard and Olivia were rebuilding their life together, step by careful step. They had decided not to move back into their old mansion with all its memories and ghosts. Instead, they bought a brownstone closer to the hospital, a place that belonged to both of them equally, filled with warmth and color and life. Richard had made good on his promise to support Olivia's career. He had set up a remote office in their home so he could work while still being present. He attended hospital functions, learned the names of her colleagues and patients, and genuinely invested in understanding her world. Olivia, in turn, made sure to create space in her busy schedule for their relationship. Date nights were sacred, phones turned off, work left at the door. They really talked about their days, their dreams, their fears. The walls that had grown between them slowly crumbled, replaced by a new intimacy, deeper than before. One evening, as they sat on their rooftop garden watching the sunset, Olivia rested her head on Richard's shoulder. I saw David today, she said quietly. Richard tensed slightly but kept his voice casual. How is he? Good. He's been seeing someone, a trauma surgeon from General Hospital. They seem happy. And you're okay with that? Richard asked carefully. Olivia looked up at him, her eyes clear and honest. More than okay. I'm happy for him. He deserves someone who loves him completely, the way I love you. Richard's heart swelled at her words. I still can't believe we almost lost this. But we didn't, Olivia reminded him. We found our way back. Richard kissed her softly, gratitude washing over him. Every day with her felt like a gift, one he would never take for granted again. The next morning, Richard woke early, watching Olivia sleep beside him. She had been tired lately, working long hours on a complicated case. He slipped out of bed quietly, determined to let her rest while he made breakfast. As he was setting the table, his phone rang. Jasmine. Morning, Jazz, he answered cheerfully. Richard, Jasmine's voice was serious. Is Olivia with you? She's sleeping. What's wrong? Has she told you? About her checkup yesterday? Richard's blood ran cold. What checkup? Jasmine went silent. Oh, Richard. I thought she would have told you by now. Told me what? Richard demanded, panic rising in his chest. Jasmine, what's going on? It's not my place to say, Jasmine said carefully. But you need to talk to her. Today. After hanging up, Richard stood frozen in the kitchen, fear gripping his heart. Was Olivia sick again? Had the lump returned? Why hadn't she told him? All the promises they had made to each other, no secrets, full communication, facing everything together, had they meant nothing? When Olivia finally came downstairs, wrapped in her robe, Richard was sitting at the table, breakfast untouched before him. Morning, she said, yawning. You let me sleep in. I just got off the phone with Jasmine, Richard said, his voice tight. She mentioned a checkup yesterday. Olivia stilled, her expression guarded. I was going to tell you. When? Richard asked, hurt and fear making his voice sharper than intended. When were you going to tell me that you're sick again? After keeping it from me the first time, after everything we've been through, you're still shutting me out. Richard, it's not what you think, Olivia started. Then what is it? He demanded. Because right now, all I can think is that history is repeating itself. That when things get tough, you still don't trust me enough to let me in. Tears filled Olivia's eyes. That's not fair. I was waiting for the right moment. The right moment was yesterday, right after your appointment, Richard said, standing up. The right moment was as soon as you knew something was wrong. The right moment was any time before your sister had to call me, worried because she thought I already knew. I'm not sick, Olivia said quietly. Richard stopped. What? I'm not sick, she repeated. I'm pregnant. The world seemed to stop. Pregnant? Richard whispered. Olivia nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. 8 weeks. I found out yesterday. I was going to tell you tonight with a special dinner. I wanted it to be perfect. Richard sank back into his chair, shock and joy and shame washing over him. A baby? We're having a baby? Olivia's expression softened at the wonder in his voice. Yes. Despite everything, despite the stress of the divorce and reconciliation, we're having a baby. Richard crossed the room and pulled her into his arms, his own tears falling freely. I'm so sorry. I jumped to conclusions. I was so scared. I know, Olivia said, holding him tight. And I should have told you right away. Old habits, I guess. But I promise from now on, no more secrets. Richard placed a gentle hand on her still flat stomach. A baby, he repeated, awe in his voice. Our baby. As they stood in their kitchen, wrapped in each other's arms, the final pieces of their broken relationship mended. This child, created in love, would be a new beginning for both of them. A symbol of hope, of second chances, of love that had weathered the storm and emerged stronger. What they didn't know was that their greatest test still lay ahead. A test that would push them to their limits and force them to confront the deepest fears they both carried. A test that would define the rest of their lives together. 6 months later, Olivia sat in her doctor's office, Richard by her side, both of them anxiously waiting for the results of her latest tests. At 7 months pregnant, Olivia had been experiencing concerning symptoms: fatigue beyond normal, pregnancy tiredness, shortness of breath, occasional chest pain. Given her history with the breast lump, her doctor had ordered comprehensive tests, and now they were waiting for answers. Richard held Olivia's hand tightly, his thumb tracing soothing circles on her palm. Whatever it is, we'll face it together, he promised. Olivia squeezed his hand, grateful for his steady presence. This time she wasn't alone. This time they were a team. When Dr. Reynolds finally entered the room, her expression was serious. I have your results, Dr. Barnes. Olivia sat up straighter, her doctor's instincts kicking in. Just tell me. Is it cancer? Dr. Reynolds shook her head. No, not cancer. But we did find a problem with your heart, peripartum cardiomyopathy. It's a rare form of heart failure that can occur during pregnancy. Richard felt the blood drain from his face. Heart failure? How serious is it? It can be very serious if left untreated, Dr. Reynolds explained. But we've caught it relatively early. With proper treatment and monitoring, many women recover completely after delivery. And if it doesn't improve? Olivia asked, her hand instinctively going to her swollen belly. Dr. Reynolds hesitated. In severe cases, it can lead to long-term heart problems, heart transplant, or, worse. The word hung in the air between them. The possibility that Olivia might not survive this pregnancy, that their child might grow up without a mother, that all they had fought to rebuild could be lost in an instant. What do we do? Richard asked, his voice steadier than he felt. Immediate bed rest, Dr. Reynolds said. Medication to help your heart function. Close monitoring until delivery, which we may need to induce early. And after the baby is born, continued treatment until your heart recovers. Olivia nodded, her medical training helping her process the information even as her emotions threatened to overwhelm her. What about the baby? The baby looks healthy, Dr. Reynolds assured her. But we'll want to deliver as soon as it's safe to do so, to reduce the strain on your heart. After scheduling follow-up appointments and arranging for a cardiac specialist, Richard and Olivia left the office in silence, both lost in their thoughts. Back at home, as Richard helped Olivia into bed, she finally broke down. I'm scared, Richard. Not just for me but for the baby. For us. Richard sat beside her, pulling her into his arms. I know. I'm scared too. But listen to me, you are the strongest person I know. You fought through harder things than this. And this time you're not fighting alone. What if? Olivia began, but Richard gently placed a finger on her lips. No, what if? Not tonight. Tonight we hold on to hope. In the weeks that followed, their lives changed dramatically. Olivia, used to being constantly in motion, struggled with the limitations of bed rest. Richard rearranged his entire life to care for her, working from home, taking over household tasks, attending every doctor's appointment. Friends and family rallied around them. Jasmine stayed with them for weeks, helping with cooking and cleaning. Olivia's hospital colleagues sent home-cooked meals and visited regularly with updates on her patients. Even David stopped by, bringing medical journals and updates on Emily Wilson, the young patient whose surgery had interrupted the gala. Through it all, Richard never left Olivia's side for long. He read to her, massaged her swollen feet, talked to their unborn child, and held her through the nights when fear kept her awake. One evening, as a thunderstorm raged outside, Olivia watched Richard setting up a bassinet in their bedroom. "Remember when we first met?" she asked suddenly. "At that charity auction in Seattle?" Richard smiled at the memory. "You outbid me for that painting I wanted. And then you invited me to dinner to convince me to sell it to you," Olivia laughed. "Best loss I ever took," Richard said, sitting beside her. "I got you instead of the painting." Olivia's expression grew serious. "I never thought we'd be here. After the divorce papers, after everything. I thought we were over." "I'm grateful every day that we weren't," Richard said, taking her hand. "That we found our way back to each other." "Even now?" Olivia asked, gesturing to her bed, the medical equipment monitoring her heart. "Even with all this?" "Especially now," Richard said firmly. "Olivia, when I saw that photo of you with David, when I thought I had lost you for good, I realized something. Success, money, power, none of it matters without someone to share it with. Without you." Tears filled Olivia's eyes. "I never stopped loving you, you know. Even at my angriest, even when I thought I was moving on with David, my heart was always yours." Richard leaned forward and kissed her gently. "And mine has always been yours. Always will be." 2 weeks later, Olivia went into labor. The delivery was difficult, with a team of specialists monitoring her heart every step of the way. Richard never left her side, holding her hand, wiping her brow, breathing with her through each contraction. When their daughter finally arrived, crying loudly and waving tiny fists, Olivia and Richard both wept with joy and relief. "She's perfect," Olivia whispered as the nurse placed the baby on her chest. "Just like her mother," Richard said, his voice thick with emotion. They named her Hope, a testament to the faith that had carried them through the darkest times, the belief that love was worth fighting for, worth second chances, worth everything. In the months that followed, as Olivia's heart slowly healed and their daughter grew stronger each day, Richard often thought about the journey that had brought them here. The pain, the separation, the fear of loss, all of it had led to this moment, this family, this love that was deeper and truer than anything he had ever known. 1 year to the day after signing the divorce papers that had nearly ended their marriage, Richard took Olivia and Hope to the beach at sunset. As the waves crashed against the shore and their daughter played in the sand, Richard knelt before Olivia. "Once, I almost lost you through my own blindness," he said, taking her hand. "I put everything else before what mattered most. I forgot to see you, to hear you, to cherish you." Olivia's eyes filled with tears as Richard continued. "This past year has taught me what truly matters. Not success or money or power, but love. The kind of love that forgives, that heals, that endures even the darkest storms." From his pocket, Richard pulled out a small box, opening it to reveal a ring, not her original wedding ring, but a new one, a symbol of their new beginning. "Olivia Barnes, will you marry me again? Will you let me spend the rest of my life showing you how much you mean to me, how much I love you, how grateful I am for our second chance?" Through her tears, Olivia smiled. "Yes," she said simply. "Today and always, yes." As they sealed their promise with a kiss, their daughter toddling toward them across the sand, Richard knew with absolute certainty that no success in business could ever compare to this. The family he had almost lost, the love he had almost thrown away, the life they were building together day by day. The journey had been long and painful, filled with regret and heartache. But as the sun set on the ocean before them, Richard understood that every step had been necessary, every tear worth shedding, every moment of pain worth enduring to bring them to this perfect moment of joy. Their story wasn't over. There would be more challenges ahead, more mountains to climb, more valleys to cross. But they would face them together, stronger for having been broken, wiser for having lost their way, and deeply, completely in love. And in the end, that was all that mattered.